I come from a family that was pretty impoverished when my parents divorced when I was 4. My mom was left with little to nothing, so I grew up with little. And this also meant that my first year at Princeton would be greatly affected by my previous experience. So when I got to, my first interaction with Princeton was actually me having to call Princeton to take out a $300 loan because I couldn't pay for my bedding and other supplies that I would need when I got here. So right off the bat, it didn't feel good to have that be my first interaction with Princeton. But once I got here, I found myself, after an initial kind of trying to figure out what was going on, revert back to my introverted self. Until 12th grade, I really did not engage much socially because I was always considered an outcast because of my family's income, because I lived in a very rich neighborhood. So any progress that I kind of made in my senior year with any social structure kind of disappeared when I got to Princeton, and I reverted back to my introvert nature. And I spent most of the first year sitting in my room, just kind of keeping to myself.
My first year was actually overall incredibly difficult, and I did not have a good time. I came to campus largely looking for support from the Latino community, and I did not find that support. I found we came from, I wouldn't say we came from very different backgrounds, but we had very different outlooks on the world, largely political debates that we didn't see eye to eye on. So that first year I was also completely closeted, so I couldn't look to the queer community for support. I didn't have the Latino community, and I did work at the Women's Center, but I was still incredibly shy, so I didn't get the support from my women's community. Overall, I mostly just spent time with my roommates, and my Z group was also not supportive. Or it wasn't a very cohesive unit. We lived in Campbell, which is a very particular room configuration that makes it really difficult to establish a really cohesive Z group community. Yeah.
So I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I remember coming here, and it was funny because I experienced culture shock on one level and almost no culture shock on another level. So in terms of racial diversity, it wasn't too much culture shock. The place where I was from was predominantly white. I kind of joke to people when they ask me, like, oh, is the transition to Princeton very hard? I say, like, it wasn't that difficult. It was just that replace a lot of white Mormons with WASPs. And there were more black people here and not as many Latinos. So where I was from, most of the people who were working like the more underpaid jobs were Latinos. And when I came to the East Coast, I noticed that most of those jobs that in Utah were done by Latinos were done by black people. And I've told people it's really funny, before I came to Princeton and before I did CA in Trenton, I had met fewer than like 10 black people in my entire life. So my culture shock came partially from that sort of racial difference from Utah. And I think I also had a little bit of culture shock coming from, I guess, what seems like a Midwest state to the East Coast. So one thing that still kind of catches me off guard is I find people on the East Coast just talk much more excitedly and much more quicker than people from like the Midwest or from the Rocky Mountain states. And I remember freshman year sometimes just feeling like really lonely and alienated, because where I was from, like, people always open the door for you. You make eye contact with someone and like you stop and chat even if it's just small talk. And freshman year, probably because everybody here is so busy, I remember feeling like almost nobody had time just to like stop and chat, talk about the weather and make small talk, see how someone's doing. And that really affected me.
I am a first-generation student. I'm also low income, and my experience has been very unique in terms of even like being first gen, because both of my parents did not have any schooling. I'm talking like no elementary school, no middle school, no high school, and both of my parents are immigrants. So college was kind of a completely different world, something my parents didn't understand. And for the most part, my parents were not supportive at all about me coming to Princeton. So when I did come, it was this very hard struggle between trying to balance life at home and trying to make sure that my parents felt comfortable with me going to Princeton, and then also trying to deal with all of the academic part of Princeton. So you know, I guess I'll be honest because most of your Z's are probably might go through something like this. I did deal with some depression freshman like spring, and it was mostly because my dad had lost his job, and there's just other family problems going on back home. So I did seek help, went to therapy, did those kinds of things. Luckily for me, I didn't struggle academically really. It was the things back home that were the things that really, for me, were the struggle freshman year. And also, being first gen, a lot of my worries or concerns were, do I even belong here? You know, am I even smart enough? Even though I was doing well in school, I still had this, I don't even feel like I'm smart enough to be here. Like, I just got lucky that I got in.
My first year experience was a little bit interesting. When I got here, I very much sought out the Latino community, and at that time, at least, it didn't really exist, or it wasn't really, it didn't have a strong foundation. So what ended up happening was I found this group of upperclassmen Latinos, just 1 year older than me, and I worked really hard to get into their little group, and they really made my first year a little bit better. But after that, I kind of realized that I had really almost, and I hate the word segregated myself, but my friends were majority Latino, and I didn't really like that. I felt that in this school that is so diverse and particularly has a white majority student body, it was a shame that I didn't have friends from all different groups. So I sought that out, and unfortunately it just didn't pan out so well, and it made me feel a little bit more marginalized on this campus. So after that, I kind of left the organization that I had joined in order to make more diverse friends.
First year at Princeton was pretty challenging for me. Coming from Jamaica, it's a lot of cultural changes, and also just coming to Princeton, which is one of the harder universities out there. It was pretty rough. Time management skills. I think the main thing was just the cultural changes. You know, having to live with someone, you know, as roommates, and so coupled with all those things, it took me some time getting used to. I'm still getting used to it. You know, some of the slangs they use. You know, some of the food, of course. I love my Jamaican food. So the weather, and there's a lot of changes that I went through freshman year that I'm still dealing with right now. And, you know, just schoolwork aside, that would have made the additional Princeton student comfortable, made it that much harder for me.
Yes, I really believe that Ryan Makes did. I still remember him. He was a great RCA, and he made sure that we all got together. He always took care of us during midterms and finals, and he made time for each and every student. He had times where we could discuss problems and made sure that we all got along, and I really appreciated that. He was a great RCA.
Had a very negative experience with our RCA. She was, I won't say names, but they were really bad. They hosted, and not that study breaks, if study breaks are any measure of how good an RCA is, my RCA hosted 2 study breaks all year. And in general, it was somebody who was very good at kind of working a room when they needed to, but it was very, very difficult for them to connect on an individual level. And that's how I mostly learn to feel comfortable with people. It doesn't matter to me if you're able to go into a room of 20 people and, you know, work the magic. It's your personal connection with me. And this RCA made it very difficult to establish a personal connection. It seemed like they were very uncomfortable around issues of difference, and they didn't know how to talk about it. And instead of really wrestling with what that meant for them, they just avoided the conversations altogether.
So when it came to my RCA, I thought he had great intentions. He was really a very engaging guy, and he always wanted to get to know us when we had our one-on-one. He really wanted to learn about where I was from and kind of how my experience was adjusting to Princeton. But the truth is, I did not feel comfortable talking to my RCA. We had not developed a relationship in which he was someone I would want to confide in and someone that I thought would be helpful to helping me overcome what I was going through. All of the events that the RCA threw were great for allowing us to get to know one another, but at some point there's nothing really an RCA can do to further facilitate the integration of someone who a group has already kind of deemed or judged.
I felt like the study breaks that we had, there were times when he would send me a person of like, hey, I know you don't really like this food, what would you like? We'll get, some stuff for you. And so I really felt like there was an active, effort to really reach out to me. And even just the other things, my freshman roommate was Asian, we got along really great. And then my Z group was just really mixed from all over the country. And I felt like the RCA really did a great job of, just bringing everyone together, making sure everyone was comfortable, and just, bringing me side to side, just like saying, hey, what's up, how's classes going? Because he knew that in the things that I was going through, that it was just different. My English wasn't perfect then, my accent was way thicker than people had a hard time understanding me. So I think, the RCA really did a great job of making me feel like, hey, welcome to Princeton. I know it's rough, but I'm here for you.
I don't think that my RCA was able to relate to a lot of us on a more personal level. He also was a little bit too busy, a little bit uninvolved, and our Z group was basically my 8-person suite, and the suite itself was very diverse, but that made it a little bit difficult to make friends, or make lasting friends, because we all had such varying personalities that sometimes we clashed, sometimes it didn't work out, and I don't know if my RCA ever really made an effort to try to get to know any of us on an individual level and find out what our needs were to help us, or if he would have known what the resources were to give us so that we could find an inclusive community that would support us outside of our Z group.
So I don't remember interacting too much with my RCA when I was a freshman. I do remember that within my Z group, it was pretty clear within the first week that there were 3 groups. There were a lot of athletes that had been here for a long time, and some of them had done FSI too, so they had already formed a friend group, and they were also seeing each other all the time during practice. So they were kind of to one side. They didn't really come to the study breaks, which was totally understandable. I think our RCA kept doing study breaks during practice time for them too, so they couldn't come. Then there was another group that immediately would always go to the RCA's room and would always go for snacks. And then after a while, it felt like my Z group got taken over by those 3 people and their friends from another Z group, which was also fine. But I just ended up not really turning to my Z group for a sense of community at all.
Yes, my RCA is amazing. She, at the very beginning, I think all RCAs do this anyway, but we had kind of the sharing experiences type things, where are you from, kind of what's your background. I don't remember exactly, but I did think she made it very clear that, none of us were going to judge anyone, that it was a safe space. So I think that helped to begin with. But after that, our Z group was very, very close. I mean, most of us ended up staying as sophomores in Byers again. That's where we all live. And I think just because she was such an open person and very funny person in general, I think she kind of just, naturally, that's what we all wanted to start doing. I think most of us feel free to go to her anyway, but also within the Z group, I don't know how exactly it happened, but most of us are very open with each other. We talk a lot about different things, but she's also very proactive in terms of if there ever was some sort of communication problem. I, for instance, kind of had a communication problem with my current roommate, and she took me out to Starbucks, right? We were sitting there and we did kind of a role play thing where she kind of reenacted what the conversation would look like. She gave me different types of responses that I could give, or ways that I could start off the conversation, and then just kind of see where it went from there. And she said, okay, what are the goals? you know, what are your goals for this conversation? And so we listed some goals and said, okay, she like set me off and then wanted me to come back to her, kind of like report, see what happened, what we can do next, and I think that was very helpful.